A few years ago, I moved into a one-bedroom apartment in Melbourne, Australia. It was my first time living on my own. The apartment block had been built in the 1930s. I'd been there for a few months. When I came home from work one day and went into the bathroom, I saw something strange, a wooden board, which had covered a hole in the ceiling that led to a small attic space, lay fractured in two pieces on the ground. I examined the pieces. The board was an inch thick, and it would have taken Bruce Lee to break it. I thought the landlord had sent someone to work on the attic. I was frozen stiff with fear. Someone is up there for sure, I thought. I emailed pictures to the landlord, asking if anyone had been there, with an undertone of annoyance, since she hadn't warned me. Her reply read, "Please call me as soon as you are able to." I called, and she explained that her last two tenants had said the same thing happened. She promised to replace the board, and she did. A month later, I woke up one night around 4 a.m. My body was covered in goosebumps. It felt like someone was rubbing his or her hands on me. Everything was silent, but then I heard a dragging sound coming from above my bed. It was as if someone was pulling a sack of potatoes. I froze, convinced someone was up there. There is no way an animal could make that sound. After 5 minutes, I worked up the courage to turn on the light, armed myself with a cricket bat and walked to the bathroom. That's when I saw that the new board covering the hole was broken in two. I felt sick. The dragging sound had stopped. But I heard something else, whispering. The sound was clear and coming from the attic. It sounded like children's voices, and I could hear one sentence repeated over and over. "It's your turn. It's your turn." I switched on every light in the apartment to make things feel normal. It was 5 a.m. and dark outside. I watched TV to try to unwind. Then a fuse blew. My pet budgie, Dexter, whom I kept in the kitchen, usually never made a sound at night, but he started squawking like he was being strangled. I'd never heard him make those sorts of noises. He was screaming. I grabbed my car keys, ran out, sat in my car and waited there until the sun came up. When I saw people walking their dogs, this comforted me enough to go back in. The front door was open, but I figured I might have forgotten to close it when I ran out. I went to the kitchen to check on Dexter, but he wasn't in his cage. I felt sick again. All my windows were closed, so I looked everywhere inside. When I walked to the bathroom, I heard splashing. Dexter was half drowned in the toilet. I took him out, washed him and dried him. I was so confused. At 8 a.m., I called the landlord and gave her a watered-down version of the night. "Oh, wow, you heard the whispering too," she said. I stayed in that apartment for another 18 months. I heard the whispering on a few occasions, and twice the board covering the hole in the ceiling moved. Although I live elsewhere now, the landlord recently called. She said that her new tenants had begged to speak with me about some of the stuff that's been going on there. I was living in a house in Laguna Beach that had been there since the 1920s. In its history, it had been a speakeasy, a brothel and a house for smuggling illegal immigrants. One day, my new wife and I were having an argument. I can't even recall what it was about. She walked down the block to get a cup of coffee and cool off, and I was alone in the house. The way the house was built was incredibly haphazard. There was a bedroom and living room on one side, then a bathroom with two entrances. On the other side of the bathroom was a hallway that had windows on one side and two bedrooms on the other. From my bedroom, I could look across the hall into the bathroom, then through the bathroom and down the other hall. I was standing by my dresser, and I just noticed movement out of the corner of my eye, and looked down there. There was, and honest to God, this gives me goosebumps just typing it, 17 years later, a black figure. It was maybe 3 feet tall, and it was only vaguely humanoid. It looked like black scribbles, like someone had scribbled a human shape, but the scribbles moved, like electricity arcing. That's the best way to describe it. There was no sound that I could remember. I distinctly remember when I saw it, I wasn't afraid, just like, WTF. Then it noticed me looking at it. I can't say it turned around, it just focused on me, I guess. Then I was scared. I didn't move, didn't scream, nothing, I was just frozen, because it just came at me, it rushed down the hall towards me. I have no idea what it intended, but as soon as it entered the bathroom, the door closest to me just slammed shut on it. I screamed. I yelled for my wife. She wasn't home. I ran outside, into the daylight, and didn't go back in until she got home about 10 minutes later. I don't believe in ghosts. I don't believe I saw something supernatural, but I know I saw something. I just don't know what it was. I was home alone one night in middle school. I was in my room, which is right above our kitchen, watching TV. I had already shut all of the lights off downstairs because I was eventually going to fall asleep and didn't want to get yelled at for leaving the lights on. So, I am laying in my bed, the family dog, a Chesapeake Bay Retriever, was lying next to me when I hear cabinet doors open and shut. It wasn't like they all opened at once and then shut, but more like one after another for a few seconds. I freeze and look at the dog, who at this point was an old lady, who perked up and looked at me. I peek out my window that overlooks our driveway and didn't see anything. Now I didn't think anyone was in the house because while the dog was lazy AF, she was a great guard dog and she would have responded if the door opened or made any noise. So, after a few seconds the dog gets up and starts moving towards the stairs, and I decide to follow, fully confident that if anyone was down there, she would scare them. I grab my softball bat and my cell phone and follow her downstairs. As we come downstairs, I notice the lights are on in the kitchen and I dial 911 because I know I shut the lights off prior to going upstairs. When we get in the kitchen, all the cabinet doors were open, which was obviously not how I left it. That's when I noticed that the door was still locked, so I thought whatever did this was still in the house. So, I quickly ran upstairs to my parents' closet and called my parents and told them what's up. They came home and obviously didn't find anyone or any trace of anyone being in the house. We still do not know why the light was on and cabinet doors were open, but we had some other paranormal-like occurrence happen around that time, so we chalked it up to the household ghost.